I never thought moving into a new house could be so unsettling. My wife and I bought our first home in a small town in Ohio. It wasn't a perfect house, nothing fancy, but it had space for our kids, a decent yard, and a quiet street. We were thrilled to finally have our own place. At first, everything seemed normal. The neighbors introduced themselves politely, waved when we passed in the driveway, and kept to their own routines. But then there was him, our next-door neighbor. Mark. Mark seemed friendly on the surface. He had a smile that put people at ease and a way of slipping into conversations effortlessly. At first, we thought it was just a small-town friendliness. I started noticing little things within the first week. When I left for work, I could swear I saw him standing near his garage, almost like he was timing my departure. It was subtle, not enough to confront anyone over. I chalked it up to coincidence. Then there were the coincidences that didn't feel like coincidences at all. A newspaper folded a certain way on our porch exactly when I came home from work. Trash bins moved slightly out of place. My wife mentioned her garden tools being slightly rearranged. I told her not to worry, that maybe the wind or animals were responsible, but the unease was creeping in. One evening, I was on the porch with our daughter, watching her swing, when I noticed Mark leaning slightly out of his window, just staring at us. It wasn't aggressive, but it wasn't casual either. I said nothing. I didn't want to make a scene, but my stomach sank. Over the next few weeks, his presence grew more noticeable. He started showing up at odd times, when I was mowing the lawn, when my wife was in the garage, when the kids were playing outside, always with that same calm smile, as if he had no right to be there, but somehow belonged. I decided to do something rational. I documented everything, dates, times, what he was doing. I told myself I wasn't paranoid. Patterns were forming. He was tracking us. Then came the first overt threat. I noticed a small note left at our mailbox. It was a single line. "You shouldn't ignore me." The handwriting was neat, intentional, precise. It wasn't a joke. That night, I barely slept. My wife tried to calm me down, but she couldn't shake the feeling either. We started locking doors obsessively. Windows, garages, even the basement. Mark still found ways to appear. One afternoon, I caught him on the side of the house, crouched as if he was examining the foundation. I yelled, and he jumped, grinning. "Just checking," he said, but his eyes didn't match his words. I called the police once, explained the situation. They told me that without clear evidence of trespassing or intent, there wasn't much they could do. I began installing security cameras. That's when I realized just how much he had been watching us. Footage showed him pacing near the property line, peeking through windows, lingering outside even when it was dark. Our lives started to shrink. We avoided spending time in the yard, even during the day. My wife stopped tending her garden. The kids stopped playing outside without supervision. Everything was overshadowed by the silent presence next door. One night, I was working late when I heard a soft tapping on the window. I froze. The backyard was dark. I got up slowly, and there he was on the other side, staring at me. Not moving, not saying anything, just looking. I felt a chill that didn't fade for hours. It escalated after that. We found our tires slashed. Our mailbox had been filled with disturbing messages, some threats, some just unsettling observations about our routines. Mark never admitted to anything, but he didn't need to. Every action he took confirmed he was in control. I tried to reason with him once, walking over to his door. He answered, smiling like nothing was wrong. I told him to stop. He nodded. That was it. But nothing changed. In fact, after that, he seemed to push harder, testing limits. The final straw came on a Sunday morning. I was outside, pulling weeds, When I noticed my daughter's swing moving gently, as if someone had pushed it, I ran over, expecting the kids to be playing. They were inside, and then I saw him, crouched in the bushes at the far end of the yard, grinning. That's when I realized he had no boundaries. He didn't just watch. He inserted himself into our lives in ways we couldn't control. We moved 6 months later. The house sold quickly. Mark waved when we left, smiling that same unnerving smile. We've never gone back. I don't know if he ever moved on to someone else or stayed there, continuing to watch whoever lived next door. Even now, years later, when I pass through small towns or move into a new place temporarily, I can't help but scan the houses nearby. Before I tell this story, I want to make something clear. I don't think every rideshare driver is dangerous. Most of them are regular people trying to make a living. But one of them, the one who crossed my path during a time when I was using rideshare almost every day, changed the way I look at strangers. I didn't realize how fast someone could slip into your life, learn your habits, and use that information in ways you don't expect. And I didn't realize how long a psychopath can stay patient before showing their real intentions. I used to rely on rideshare apps constantly. I was living alone in a rented apartment in Richmond, Virginia. I didn't have a car back then because mine had broken down and I didn't have the cash to replace it. I worked at a bank downtown, and the commute wasn't far, but the walk felt unsafe when it was still dark in the mornings, so I stuck with the app. The first time I met him was on a Wednesday morning in early November. I remember because it was one of those cold mornings where the air feels heavy before sunrise. His name on the app was Daniel. He drove a navy blue sedan that looked clean and newer than what most drivers in my area used. When he pulled up, the headlights lit up the whole front of my building. I got in, gave the usual polite hello, and he answered with a soft tone that felt friendly, maybe even overly friendly. From the moment I sat down, he tried to strike up conversation. Normally, I'm not a chatty person during morning rides, but he kept asking questions. Nothing strange at first. What I did for work, where I grew up, if I lived alone or with roommates. I didn't answer that last part, and I felt a little stupid for the things I did tell him. Looking back, I can see the pattern now, but at the time I thought he was just making small talk. The first ride was uneventful other than the odd questions. He dropped me off and said, "Have a good day. I'll probably see you again." I brushed it off. There weren't that many drivers in my area, so repeats happened all the time. 2 days later, I got matched with him again. This time I noticed something subtle. He already knew what building I was coming out of before I got into the car. He didn't check the GPS. He just said, "Heading to the bank again?" I hadn't even told him yet. It threw me off. I laughed it off awkwardly and asked how he remembered. He said, "I have a good memory, and you're pretty hard to forget." It was meant to sound charming, but it didn't land right. It wasn't even flirty. It felt more like a statement, the kind you can't respond to without walking into something. Over the next week or so, I got matched with him 3 more times, and each time, something felt a little more off. One day he mentioned something about my building that I had never told him. Another day he commented on the time I usually left for work. Another time he said he drove past my street often because he liked the area. It was subtle, quiet, almost casual, but it put something in my chest I couldn't shake. By the time it hit mid-November, I started avoiding the app during certain times so I wouldn't get paired with him. It actually worked for a while. I hadn't seen his name for almost a week, but that didn't mean he wasn't around. The following Monday, I walked outside to wait for a different driver. I was checking the app when a navy blue sedan slowed down near the curb. My driver on the app was a totally different car model. I wasn't expecting anyone else, but the blue sedan idled there, not pulling up all the way, not leaving either. I couldn't see inside because of the glare on the windshield. Then, slowly, it pulled away. I didn't think much of it in the moment, until I got in my actual rideshare and the driver said, "Does that guy always wait around for you?" I asked him what he meant. He said, "The guy in the blue car. He circled the block twice while I was pulling up." That shut me down for the rest of the ride. The next time I matched with Daniel was an accident. I had ordered a ride from the grocery store one evening after work, and I didn't look at the driver name until the car was already approaching. When I saw a Daniel navy blue sedan approaching, my stomach dropped. I thought about canceling, but the driver was already a couple 100 feet away. He stopped at the curb, leaned over, and smiled through the window. "I was wondering when I'd see you again." I got in because I didn't know what else to do. It was broad daylight, but it didn't comfort me at all. Something felt different this time. Not friendly, not weird, but intentional. Focused, like he wasn't pretending anymore. The ride was quiet at first. Then he said, "You're not taking rides in the morning anymore. Did your schedule change?" I answered vaguely, saying work hours shifted. He didn't believe it. "No, they didn't," he said calmly. "I still see you're building lights on around 6. You're awake at the same time." That moment felt like stepping off the edge of a drop. My throat went dry. I didn't say anything back. He drove like nothing unusual had happened. When he dropped me off, he smiled again and said, "You should be more talkative. I'm trying to get to know you." I didn't order another rideshare for 2 weeks after that. I asked people from work for rides. I borrowed co-workers' spare bike for a few days. I even considered moving. Anything to put distance between us. Then something even worse happened. It was the day after Thanksgiving. I was off work and I slept in. Around 9 in the morning, I heard a soft knock on my apartment door. Not loud, not persistent. Just a light tap that repeated after a few seconds. I didn't open it. I looked through the peephole. Daniel was standing there. No uniform, no phone in his hand, no excuse to be at my door. He wasn't smiling this time. He looked calm, but not friendly. His eyes were wide, focused, studying the door like he was waiting for any movement behind it. I didn't make a sound. I backed away slowly. He knocked again just once. Then he said through the door, "You're here. I can hear you breathing." I covered my mouth with both hands. I didn't breathe again for at least 30 seconds. I couldn't process anything. My whole body felt disconnected, like I was watching someone else go through it. After a long moment, he whispered, "Open the door." I didn't move. Then calmly he said, "Okay, I'll see you later." I waited until I heard his footsteps fade. Then I went straight for my phone and dialed 911. The dispatcher took it seriously, but there wasn't much they could do since he hadn't broken in or physically harmed me. They sent a patrol car to circle the area. I sat in the living room shaking until evening. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. Over the next week, nothing happened. No knocks, no sightings, nothing. I hoped maybe he got scared off when I called the police. I was wrong. The following Monday, I went downstairs to pick up a package from the mailroom. When I bent down to lift the small box, something shifted behind it. I pulled the package away, and there it was, a folded piece of paper. My name was written on the outside. Inside, there was a short message in the same careful handwriting I had seen on his rideshare profile. "Stop hiding. I moved out 3 weeks later. I crashed with family while I searched for a new place in a different city. I changed jobs. I deleted the rideshare app entirely. I bought a used car even though I could barely afford repairs if it broke again. I never saw Daniel again. But here's the part that still gets to me. Every time I go somewhere new, anytime a stranger looks at me a little too long or knows something about me I didn't expect them to know, it hits me all over again. That feeling that someone out there is watching my movements a little too closely, waiting for the moment they think I'm vulnerable again. And the truth is, if someone like that decides to study you, you don't notice it right away. You think you do, but you don't. They're patient in a way most people aren't. They collect details the way other people collect casual conversations. They wait until you stop paying attention. I learned that the hard way. Most people assume therapists are safe by default. You walk into an office, sit on a couch, and trust that the person across from you has the training and ethics to handle your private life responsibly. I trusted that too. I never questioned whether the man who called himself a therapist actually had any credentials, or whether he had personal motives behind the calm, quiet way he listened. By the time I realized something was wrong, I had already handed him pieces of my life I couldn't take back. What happened still affects the way I talk to any professional today, because he didn't just lie about who he was. He used the most vulnerable parts of my life to pull me into something far darker than I could have imagined. I started seeing him during one of the hardest periods of my life. I had just gone through a messy breakup, moved to a new apartment in Denver, and was dealing with work stress that made it hard to sleep. My coworker suggested therapy, and I agreed. I wasn't embarrassed about it. I just wanted someone neutral to talk to. He had an office in a small private building near downtown. Nothing fancy, just a room on the second floor with a couch, a desk, and a small bookshelf. The sign outside his door said Dr. Harold Lawson, licensed therapist. I didn't verify anything beyond that. When life is overwhelming, you look for comfort, not credentials. Our first session felt normal. He was calm, soft-spoken, and attentive. He didn't interrupt much. He made eye contact in a way that felt steady, but not aggressive. He asked about my life, my stress, how I slept. He took notes with a slow, deliberate style. When I talked, he listened with an expression that made me feel understood. That feeling didn't last long. By the third or fourth session, he began asking questions that didn't sound therapeutic. He asked where I lived. He asked what floor I was on. He asked who visited me regularly, what hours I usually got home, whether my neighbors were noisy. At the time, it felt like he was trying to understand my day-to-day environment. Now I understand it was something else. One day, he asked if I ever left my windows unlocked. That question stuck with me. It didn't sound like something that belonged in a session. I laughed awkwardly and said, "I live alone, so I keep everything locked." He nodded without reacting. Then he wrote something down. For a few weeks, the sessions were uneventful again. We talked about work, the breakup, the move. He always asked very specific questions about my schedule, what time I usually woke up, when I walked my dog, which grocery store I preferred. He asked in such a calm, neutral tone that I didn't think twice. The first red flag hit on a Wednesday night around 10 p.m. I had just come back from a grocery run when I noticed a small sheet of lined paper sticking out from under my apartment door. At first, I thought it was an advertisement or a notice from the building office. It wasn't. It was a short note, written in the same neat handwriting I had watched him use in his office. "You shouldn't isolate yourself so much. It makes people worry about you." There was no name on it, no signature, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. I stared at the paper for almost a full minute before I reacted. My heart was pounding. My mind raced through explanations. Maybe someone was copying his handwriting. Maybe the building management left something weird. Maybe I was making connections where there weren't any. But deep down I knew. I didn't go to my next appointment. He called that night. His tone was gentle, almost concerned. He said he noticed I missed my session and wanted to check if something had triggered anxiety. I didn't mention the note. I just said I needed to skip a week. He said he understood. The following morning, another note appeared under my door. Avoiding your problems won't fix them. No one else in my life knew my schedule like that. No one else knew what nights I was home. No one else would use phrasing that matched his tone exactly. I brought the note to the apartment office. They said they'd check cameras. The hallway camera faced the wrong direction and didn't catch my door. The building manager suggested I file a report just in case. I did. When I skipped the second appointment, he didn't call immediately. But that night, as I walked to my car to grab something I left inside, I saw his car parked across the street from my building. He wasn't inside, at least not from what I could see. But the make, model, and bumper sticker matched exactly. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I made the mistake of answering his call. He said he wanted to help me understand why I was withdrawing so suddenly. He asked if someone had influenced me. He asked if I felt unsafe with others. His voice stayed calm, almost soothing, but the words felt off. I told him I needed space. He paused for a long time before saying, "I don't think space is what you need." Then he hung up. I decided I wasn't going back to his office again. I Googled him, expecting to find a website, reviews, something verifying his practice. There was nothing. No license information, no degree, no business listing. The building was a shared office space with cheap monthly rentals, not a medical facility. His name didn't come up anywhere in association with mental health services. I called the state licensing board. They confirmed exactly what I feared. There was no therapist registered under his name, no license, no credentials. The police took that part seriously. They followed up, visited the office, and found the room empty. Not cleaned out, just empty, like he had never moved anything in to begin with. No couch, no notes, no books, no business cards. The sign with his name had been peeled off the door. He disappeared, but that didn't fix anything. A week after the police visit, something happened that confirmed exactly what he was capable of. I came home from work and found my apartment door slightly open. It wasn't forced. The lock wasn't broken, but the bolt was turned as if someone with a key had opened it. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was moved. Nothing was damaged. Except for one thing. On my kitchen table was a notebook, the same kind he used in his office. I recognized the cover, the size, the worn edges. Inside were notes about me. Pages and pages of handwritten observations. My habits, my frustrations, my daily routines, my insecurities, my schedule down to the minute. He had written things I never said out loud. Things I only thought and kept to myself. Things I didn't even express in sessions. That meant he had been watching me outside the office. Maybe listening. Maybe snooping around my apartment long before I even suspected anything. On the last page, there was one sentence. "Don't look for another therapist. I understand you better than anyone else ever will." I called the police again. They took the notebook, took fingerprints, took photos, but he vanished completely. His phone number stopped working. His car wasn't seen again. The shared office was rented to someone else within a month. I ended up moving apartments and installing security cameras in every hallway I could legally cover. Every time I walked into a new building, I checked the exits, checked the corners, checked for anyone sitting in a parked car too long. Years later, I'm still cautious. Not because I believe he'll come back, but because I learned something I never considered before. Someone doesn't need to break into your life with force to destroy your sense of safety. Sometimes all they need is your trust, your vulnerability, and a quiet room where you believe they have your best interest at heart. He used that room to study me, and he almost made me believe he was helping while he did it.